let me introduce my panelists for the talk Eastern Europe on the Rise, New Voices, New Futures. We have Marie Montessier, DJ and label head of Pariah. We have Jakub over here at the very end, Vice President, Domestic Poland and A&R of Central Eastern Europe of Universal Music Poland. And then Laszlo, Creative Director of Inota Festival and part of Electronic Beats Hungary. Woo! And we have Basia, Festival Manager and Producer of Unsound, also in Poland. So as we're getting started, everyone, I wanted to have a broader question, I suppose. And for those who are unfamiliar with some of the economic trends that are part of Eastern Europe or Europe at large, many of the continent's fastest growing cities and I guess skyrocketing GDP actually comes out of Central and Eastern Europe. And Poland's economy in particular is considered a star player as of last year. And so let's talk about how there are perhaps perceptions of Eastern Europe that are lagging behind because of its kind of post-Soviet roots. How would you explain these old perceptions and how are they being turned around in the contemporary moment?
So I think old perceptions and very violent images about the region are that still some countries in the East are seen through the Soviet area and post-socialist lens. So we have a historical and artificial divide between the Western and the Eastern Europe. I guess there are a lot of also persistent stereotypes about the East, looking, for example, at discrimination and racism, for example, anti-Slavism, which is often less visible because Eastern Europe these people are perceived as white. And also a perception that these countries are economically backwards due to the region's lower socioeconomic status, classism. We have negative stereotypes about Eastern Europeans. I guess, therefore, we should maybe ask ourselves how these perceptions can be challenged in the region and its identity, especially also the subculture, and that we can more accurately and prominently represent Eastern European artists in our scene.
Following up on what Mari said, I feel like there's also a huge misconception about everything in the Eastern Europe being uniform and not diverse enough, while we have multiple countries with multiple cultures, each country within their own regions. There's so much variety and depth that I feel like now, as we're discussing widely musical industry, it also shows in that way. So definitely way more diverse area than some people may still expect it to be.
Yeah, I suppose that there is this tendency to group Eastern Europe together, but also I think there's a difference between the hard power, which is more like economic and political when it comes to what we were just discussing in Eastern Europe, and then soft power, which is where we come in terms of IMS and culture and club culture and electronic music in particular. That changes a perception of a country or region. So it's not just political and economic. So Basia, Unsound Festival has been going on for 20 years plus, and it's very much a success of soft power. It's very much had so much inspiration and people coming to the region to discuss its heritage and also these incredible sites all around Krakow. So can you tell me more about the programming and the strategy behind this? Was this some kind of plan or, yeah, please go on.
I mean, I think what's interesting about Unsound is the fact that soft power isn't simply a byproduct of what we do. It's actually, over the years, became a very conscious strategy and framework for us, in a way, how we think about the festival and our own work. And actually, I'm quite happy that we're starting with this question because we haven't announced that yet, but the theme for Unsound this year will be actually soft power. So it ties really nicely to what we're discussing today. This is a topic that we dived in last year as part of our conference/discourse program. And we've decided to expand it further this year as part of a main part of the festival. I feel like also coming back to the strategy question, it's definitely focusing on building something that is both deeply local but also genuinely global. This is something that was key to the festival identity from the very early days. Obviously, our main edition is in Kraków in Poland, but we've managed to create multiple international editions. And what's important that it's not just repeating what we're doing in Kraków and showcasing it all over the world. It's all tied together, helping us create a dialogue between different scenes, international scenes. We've been focused on activities in New York, Adelaide, London. Last year, we did an event for the very first time in Japan. We had an Osaka edition, which went amazingly. Yeah, I feel like the work itself is also a statement on the soft power activities that we have. And another thing I wanted to mention is, given the global context, is also deepening our presence locally. And actually, this year also, we haven't announced that yet. I don't want to spill too much, but we'll be doing first time ever edition in Warsaw, expanding our Kraków activities. So we'll be active in the capital of Poland. And yeah, I feel like this is also mirroring something that we've been doing internationally, but now focusing on the local grounds at home.
So it feels like there's an import of bringing people to Poland, but then also exporting this kind of Polish talent elsewhere.
Yeah.
So Laszlo, you were very inspired by Unsound in Anota Festival, was what you mentioned.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and so how do you showcase Hungarian talent and Hungarian culture to the people that come and visit?
Yeah. It's a big honor for me to sit here because when we visited Unsound Festival first, it gave us lots of inspiration while we were just still dreaming about Inota Festival. So Inota Festival, if you don't know it, it takes place in an old, abandoned communist power plant area in Hungary, just 1 hour from Budapest. And it's huge. I mean, really, really huge. It's so huge that they cannot dismantle it. They cannot renovate it because it would cost just too much money. So it has been standing there for decades now, and it's completely abandoned. The basic idea was that we, on the border of the Eastern and Western world, we have this heritage. We have this historical buildings. We have this communist heritage. We cannot do anything with it. We take it with ourselves. And the idea was to fill it with culture and music. And that's in the present. And that's how we can connect the past with the future in the present.
So in both cases, you have a festival that brings people in, but Jakub, you work for Universal Music Poland, and then you mentioned how social media is actually a fantastic tool for these artists to get their streams in, to get more exposure globally. Could you explain some more success stories about what you've seen in terms of genres in the region?
Sure. I mean, the first thing is that Eastern Europe altogether is more than 150 million people living in. So that's a lot of these people are very talented, and that's really a lot of people in general when it comes to music consumption. The streaming market is growing heavy double digit throughout the last years. So finally, those markets are able to break a particular number of streams that will become relevant for other markets as well to start consuming the music itself. So that's a big privilege, and that's a great handicap for building hits. But other than that, if we look, for instance, on Romania, that is still not that huge when it comes to streaming. We have last year, that was last year. Fantomel, who is the local Romanian producer and DJ, has dropped together with his partner Caitlin. They've dropped a song called Dame un Gr, and that was a song you probably all know that song. Basically, from nowhere, to several billion views on TikTok, it was probably around 2 weeks. And they became a huge phenomenon throughout the world. Ever since, this song has, I don't know, even we stopped counting literally, because it was like really tens of billions of usage of that sound on TikTok, on YouTube Shorts, together with YouTube and Spotify and other DSPs. It's basically hundreds of millions of streams. And that's a massive, very fresh example of how can we become huge, coming from let's say a small territory, right? Romania is 20 million people living in, and it's very difficult to break a record out of Romania. And actually, Dame un Grr is a song that basically has few percent of streams coming from Romania. The rest comes from the rest of the world, and that's an amazing example. And there are more and more examples of these artists growing from countries from Eastern Europe. That was, for instance, Baby Lasagna with Eurovision hit that became a huge thing around Europe, and opened the act actually to tour around Europe. Then we have Hania Rani from Poland, who is very well appreciated classical artist throughout the world. There's many artists, and most of all, there are more and more of those artists. Also, Okryzek, who is like a funk artist, and becomes like also another wave within the funk niche around the world. So yeah, it's very nice to see how this growing economy, together with very talented people and their own cultural musical kind of origins between the countries, they start growing and moving outside of the country and the region.
Thank you so much for that. So the tagline for this talk is New Voices, New Futures. How do you all individually, whether through its festival organization, editorial work, or A&R, really developed and project these new voices into the rest of the world, right? It's quite a big responsibility. Please.
I feel like, in general, the approach in developing artists across the region is about staying deeply connected to what's happening on the ground. At the core of Unsound Festival, we have a curatorial model led by our founder and artistic director, Matt Schultz, who is working with a wide range of curators, music professionals who invite people internationally, but also locally in Poland to co-create program with us. So the diversity element is definitely important to us. But what has been a really crucial part of our activity is placing Polish artists within the international context. And this is something that we've been doing constantly for many, many years, to program the local talent in Poland with international acts, not as a separate category or like a separate stage or different descriptions, but as a part of a whole conversation. And I feel like that's really important to highlight that we never do this division and separating local Polish artists from the international acts. It's always connected all together as part of one single conversation of the festival program.
I'm guessed because I'm the outside perspective a little bit here on the panel, as I'm half German, half French. But through my work, I try also to give platforms to locals or upcoming artists, because I think, especially as an international artist, you have some sort of responsibility also for the new generation, also to be a role model, to give something to the next generation, because I think it's also a core value of the electronic music scene, and it's a fast growing business, and it's of course at the same time very tricky to keep the balance between a fast growing business and still having the subculture in front as well as the upraising artists. So I try to do it through the work of my label, also look where the people come from, also gender-based. Like there are so many aspects I'm looking at. For some festivals, for example, Unsound Festival is super good example of like bringing local people. And I think also there's a big benefit also to have local artists on a festival lineup like Unsound Festival, because if we look, for example, on ecological aspects, it's a huge benefit just to invite local artists and then to give them a big opportunity and a platform. And I think it's not only the responsibility from a promoter, it is also the responsibility of us international artists to bring in ideas to push upcoming and local artists forward with us.
Yeah, also, I wanted to quickly chime in on what Marie said is the constant timetable discussion and the fact that sometimes, or even more times that we wish, local artists are never given the prime time in the timetables, are never connected with the bigger acts or the international acts. So also, let's say, for example, pairing a local artist for a back-to-back with someone with a wider reach or a more international element is something that we've been doing for years now, and it's a great formula. I wish more festivals applied, actually.
I think that when we are talking about the idea of a back-to-back, it's not just a one-way relationship, right? It's a reciprocal, symbiotic relationship. And I know that Marie, you mentioned back-to-backs with local DJs as a way to really share talent and connect with other artists and create a personal dialogue. Why do you believe that this is a key way to bridge cultures?
I think, yeah, back-to-backs, they create, of course, like a musical dialogue between the artists, but also like a cultural dialogue at the same time. So if I share a bigger stage with a smaller artist or a local artist, it doesn't mean that the local artist is smaller, but perceived as smaller maybe. It can be like a super good tool as an international artist also to show what's happening in the region right now, who's the local artist, and also to share my platform, because having a big platform obviously is also a privilege. So I guess I understand when some artists are a bit dogmatic about their back-to-backs, because you never know how it's going to turn out. Will it be good or not? Is it a great fit? But at the end, I mean, we have all access to social media and the internet. It's also doing research about local artists, listening to sets, maybe like dive into it. Is it a great fit or not? But also seeing not only your own opportunity, but the opportunity also for smaller artists. And I guess also like subculture is not only brought from the outside, subculture comes from the inside of a local scene. And I guess we need to be careful not to lose it right now, because as said, the business is growing so fast. So I guess, as you said, like looking at timetables, I would love, for example, to warm up for a local artist. I don't have to be on the primetime slot always. Like it would be so great, like if I do a warm-up slot and then maybe the stage is fuller because people know me as an international artist, and then I create an opportunity for a local artist, and that creates some sort of dialogue, but also like I share my stage with other people. And also, like, I think less hierarchy means more freedom, and more freedom means more space, and more space means creativity. So I guess that's something we need to focus as international artists as well.
And so this is the part of the panel where we discuss more regional challenges. So there's a lot of excitement about platforming artists, various festivals, what have you, but this doesn't come without various challenges too. And I'm sure each of you have come across various barriers, whether it's government funding in terms of in what's going on in Hungary, or constantly fighting for government funding in the case of Unsound, or other hidden costs. So for the festival organizers of the bunch, what are some of the very serious concrete challenges that you've come across in the planning process, in the programming process?
I mean, it's definitely the funding, the public support, the fact, let's say for us as Unsound, we are an NGO, so our be or not to be is fully dependent on the grant support and the public funding, and this is definitely a challenge to plan ahead, because also besides working on the lineup and creating a festival, preparing for it, we have a year-round job to do to secure the funding, to plan it, to contact not only locally but also bigger partners, international partners, private donors. It's a combination of all of it. and it's never fully 100% secure for you. You never fully know if you will be able to collect the public funding and continue with your initiative. So that's definitely a risk, especially in more unstable political times as well. Yeah.
Yeah, the situation in Hungary is really, I would say, specific. So there are no governmental and state funds at all supporting this cultural scene. So it's a really interesting situation that basically in Hungary, a telecommunication company, Telekom, stepped into the role of the state and started to support the independent art communities. So we have lots of interesting projects. Even during, maybe it's really hard to imagine it from the part of the western part of Europe, but even during the COVID, the artists, the clubs, the festival, they didn't get a cent of funding, not just nothing, literally nothing. So, for example, during the COVID, together with the Hungarian Telekom, we start when you couldn't go anywhere during the lockdown. We started really interesting programs. For example, the artists didn't get the opportunity to play in over, so we started interesting streams. We started a talent scouting program called Selector, because we were thinking about what you can do when you cannot meet your friends, when you are separated. You can produce music in your home studio. So we announced the talent scout that you can send your music in 3 genres. It was pop, club, and experimental, and then you get the winners get the opportunity to take their music to professional studio to do the mixing and mastering together, and the result was professional releases. So it's one of my favorite personal programs. So thanks Hungarian Telekom to do that, and also the German Telekom.
Just to follow up on what was said regarding the pandemic in Poland, when you got the funding for the year the pandemic hit, everyone got it taken. It was taken back, so it was like cut over 60, 70 some organizations, or even 80%. For us, it was extremely challenging because obviously, how are you supposed to do a festival with a bunch of people when we have COVID running around? And this was actually in the end, quite successful year for us in terms of we were able to actually host and start our own Unsound lab, which allowed people to obviously send an application and be able to work with professionals. First edition, it was during COVID, it was online, but then we continued it, and this year we have a 3rd edition of Unsound lab. It's a really cool project. It's happening over summertime with a very small group of people, where they get a chance to have like one-on-one master classes with different music professionals. So that was our story with the limitations back then.
I actually wanted to go back briefly about Hungary, especially because we're moving from a right-wing government that didn't produce a lot of arts funding to something that's more hopeful. And I'm curious about, like what does it feel like on the ground? Is there hope for more support, or how is the community receiving that?
It would be a long story to talk about this, because it's really fresh, the political situation in Hungary. Basically, the underground cultural scene was always independent from the government. So and I think it's a very good thing, because they are not. We don't depend from the actual political power. In the past few years, the situation was a little bit, I would say, tough. So the lack of support was one thing, but in the end, this type of culture was literally attacked by the government. So maybe you have heard about the police raids against the clubs. So the government in the end of right before the election started a fake war on drug campaign, and they were doing like unbelievable things like pulling out people from the cabs in front of the clubs, or when they caught someone on the street with like 1 gram of weed, and that person told to the police that it's from this and that club, the club was immediately shut down. So I'm representing here Turbina Cultural Center, which was also shut down 1 month before the elections. So it was interesting, but I think these things made our community stronger. So we were holding our programs in the form of protests on the street. That was an amazing feeling. So and now this community is ready to continue. I think it can be a new era, because maybe now we don't have to fight for survival every day. Maybe we can step on the next level, and only if they just leave us alone, it's it's a big help also.
Yeah, it really is a story of resilience here. And I'm excited to see what the next chapter holds. Jakub, are there any challenges through an A&R perspective in terms of what we've discussed?
Well, I think that the biggest challenge of music is music itself, right? So there's this paradox that from one side, the technological development is basically supporting very no barrier entering the creative world, and producing music, spreading the word, distributing the music. On the other side, it's very difficult to break through, because we basically have I think right now more than 100,000 songs daily dropped to the DSPs, and the oversupply is nuts. So that's I would say that's the biggest challenge, and our advice always to the artists is just do your thing, and considering the Eastern Europe market, how rich it is in different cultures. I think the biggest advantage here is that we could implement those cultural elements into the music that we want to spread around the world, and time to time they're just gonna spread, because it's just so amazing how different genres throughout the countries are growing, how huge heritage on the cultural and musical side we have in all of these countries in Eastern Europe, that we should definitely try to present to the world through music. And I think that's kind of like the challenge is to break through with that song, because there are 100,000 other songs in this particular day that's being released. But as long as we're going to be original, and as long as we're going to add some unique value to the listeners, and some special emotions, I think there's going to be more and more of those songs that might succeed, actually.
That's an excellent answer. And it opens up the question of what kind of futures, whether it's on a local level or an international level, do you hope to come to fruition from your respective perspectives?
Right.
I think, like, for example, I don't know if many artists have that, but like, as you said, like, especially Eastern Europe or Eastern European culture is very much underestimated. We're always speaking about the West, looking at international artists from that region, but like, we really underestimate other regions, I think. And I personally, as an artist, have, for example, an inclusion rider. It's maybe not a solution, but just maybe an idea. And I always have this inclusion rider, for example, in my technical rider, which means as a promoter, if you look at the inclusion rider, you'll see the technical rider, and then you see at the end some key values. And I ask, for example, always like also gender-based, but also heritage, like for local artists, but also on the same or bigger stage, for example. So I do look at the responsibility towards myself as well. That this could be an idea, for example, and I think it's more also like about stating a wish rather than to go down the road to put pressure and to be like, okay, this has to be like this, and the lineup has to look like that. But it's more like, look, we could look at other aspects, at other artists. This could be an idea. Should we maybe create a dialogue between this artist and this artist? I think it's a lot maybe more about talking about things also, I guess. We're all working in the business and we're all working 24/7. I feel like I think the misperception also of electronic music is that we're all just working on the weekend and super chill. But like, I guess taking the time sometimes to lean back and just to look a little bit from the outside. Okay, what do I have here? In which region am I playing? What could I bring into as an artist? Not only the promoter is something I think is very important. And I think my biggest critique about the, like, for example, more like the Balkan, southeastern region, if we look, for example, not only on the east, but also like on Croatia, for example, if we look at festivals in the Balkan regions like Croatia, we have a lot of big festivals from everywhere from the West, but I don't see local artists. Like there was one festival I played, it's Lighthouse Festival in Croatia, and they had one local artist that he was like back in the days from the 90s. It was a cool idea, but like in general, I see only international artists, and I'm like, why are we doing this? Like we underestimate really the power of smaller local artists, and we should share privilege. We should share stages. And I think, yeah, sharing is caring. And I think this should be more a value that we put up front also as an artist, even if we obviously want to go our own career, but maybe push also the local scene forward more.
Right. Well, woo, hear it out. Cheers to that. In the last 5 or so minutes, I wanted to ask the IMS Golden Thread 2026 closing question, which is, what does a truly reclaimed dance floor look like to you? And what needs to change to get us there for the next generation? And I think you touched upon this, but even, yeah, sky's the limit, whatever comes to mind.
Okay, I keep it short to leave a little bit of room for the others. As said, I think we need to be honest and stop talking about the industry like 20 years ago. We're not there anymore. We're not in the 90s. Like the subculture is being commercialized. So if we can work profit oriented but still keep the core values, it would be amazing. So how can we connect as fast growing industry, as I said, and keep those key values? And because at the end we have to ask ourselves, who are we as an electronic music scene if we lost these values? So playing smaller venues, pushing local artists, maybe working on inclusion riders is something that should be provided to keep our very, very important subculture alive.
Yep. Amen to that. I mean, to me, it's focusing on the definitely on the underrepresented, whether it's experimental, whether it's queer, whether it's local communities, whether it's more of a challenging in an artistic form. I feel like this is our responsibility. And this is the only solution to keep up the collaboration and actually giving a platform to the underrepresented or emerging, whatever you want to call it. And especially, I feel like anyone who has a platform, whether it's a festival, whether it's an agency, editorial activity, management, you name it, we should lead by example, because this is the only way to actually provide platform for the unheard and to provide opportunities. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's just an independent, safe space without politics, without police raids. Just leave the kids alone.
Yeah, I would say we should do it just for the culture, right? So, I mean, if we're gonna treat each other with respect, we're gonna share some love, and we're just gonna have fun out of it. It's just gonna be a growing movement, and that's at the end of the day what makes it big. And it's. I mean, all the success and the scale of any activity is just a side effect of people having appropriate emotions and fun out of doing something. And I think that's the core. So we should rely at the very beginning on our emotions and on just having fun. And and maybe that sounds plain, but it's actually, if we're gonna start out of that and we're gonna roll with the passion, it's just gonna be like a big wrecking ball and breaking everything around. And yeah, that's just gonna be a growing movement. That's it.
All right. And that's it. Give it up for our panelists, everyone. Marie, Basia, Laszlo, and Jakub. Thank you so much for joining us and staying locked through this 40 minutes.